Three,
So
two, one, go.
the two videos that I showed you are, the first one was to kind of involve you into this general topic of language. How do we actually physically speak? How do we basically talk, and how do we basically communicate with each other? And now I showed you the video with Noam talking about where did language actually come from. Archaeology has showed us that some kind of leap, he calls it the Great Leap Forward, only happened about 50,000 years ago, which is, as he says, it's an instant in human evolution. 50,000 years ago is not very long. And it makes me think, how did people communicate before that? What was there, grunting or sounds or so Noam has set up some principles of speaking or of language. He I believe, or as I see it, his principles makes the language kind of rigid. There are some rules that has to be present in order to make language a possibility. He also talks about universal grammar, which points in the direction that even though we have these 7,000 languages in the world, you can basically, as the first video shows, boil them down to three basic factors, or X amount of factors that are present and has to be present in every language in order to actually be. I will cover the Austrian-British philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein, born 1889, died in 1951. 2 years when he was around 30, he wrote the book Tractato Logico Philosophicus. As far as I understand, it's kind of his thoughts when he was in the First World War I. He was a soldier, and when he was like doing his guard shifts, his mind would wander, and his thoughts then became the book Tractatus Logico Philosophicus that he published in 1921. Then 2 years after his death in 1953, the book Philosophical Investigations was published. And just like before, this is just a small 1-minute video. So just like before, please watch it. And I'll see you in around 1.5 minutes. Perfect. Ready? Are you recording, Peter?
Yes, I'm recording. I didn't stop because it was just a minute. So
that's okay. So Wittgenstein's theory with the beetle in the box actually expands on Mr. Noam Chomsky's theory about where language started. Wittgenstein gave me the epiphany that actually, even though we all have this, say we speak either Danish or English or whatever language you speak, even though we use the same words for beetle or for cat or whatever thing we're talking about, the color green, car, whatever, we don't necessarily have the same understanding of whatever we're talking about. It's quite obvious. We each have our beetle in our box. We know what our beetle looks like. We can see it. We can kind of talk about it, but we can never see the other person's beetle, which means that even though we use the same language, we don't necessarily have the exact same understanding of what a certain object or thing is. So my kind of conflict here is that Chomsky kind of sets some basic rules that have to be present in order for language to be, and then Wittgenstein puts on another, like the next level thing, which is that because we have this language, it has to be present, or these rules have to be present in order for language to be. Because we each have our personal understanding and translation of what a certain thing is, that makes the language more adaptive. I just quickly crossed Chauvin Chapman, talking about Mr. Noam Chomsky's internal language and external language. There's the mind. Actually, as the video showed with Mr. Noam Chomsky, you really have you really need to focus and concentrate in order to not talk to yourself. We do this all the time. So the internal language is the I language. It's what we think. It's what we kind of how we act. Not how we act, but what we think and what we want to say. Whereas the external language is, you can say, the body language, the E language, observable behavior. I would say that's the body language. Chauvin Chapman cites Jerry Fodor. He says that thoughts are dependent on and acquired with individual languages. So actually, for my personal experience, the more I speak English, the more I think and I actually dream in English. I've heard a lot of people having this experience. So you can actually, if you know multiple languages, you can actually train your brain, or your brain gets used to thinking in other languages, even though your native language might be Lithuanian, Danish, Chinese, or whatever. I will just again briefly cover the British philosopher of language, H.P. Grice, born 1913, died in 1988. He studied semantics. He wrote the book Logic and Conversation. And there's the so-called Gricean pragmatics. Just like before, please watch this short video, and I will see you in a few minutes.